Hello and welcome back to the Becoming Relentless podcast. I am your host, Noa McCabe. I am a Team Mahaley coach and opposing coach, and I am joined by my lovely co-host,
Danielle Kusenberger, Team Mahaley coach.
Cecilee Wech, coach.
and
I'm the guest today, Dillon Phaneuf. I also am a coach. I've been lucky enough to be on here a few times. And the last time we had a conversation, we decided that we would maybe open it up to a Q&A and see if there was some value we could provide kind of in the trenches, which I think was stemmed from a conversation that we actually had that was kind of directed at Danielle, kind of put her on the spot. But it ended up being a great conversation. And we thought, hey, maybe we can expand that out into helping some people here. So hopefully we can do just that.
Yes.
yeah,
It's going to be
I'm
great.
super looking forward to this. I feel like we all got really great questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
People are curious.
Yes.
Yes, they
There's
are.
always a few where you're like,
Yeah, some
I
questions.
don't know about these, but there's some golden
Yeah.
nuggets in there as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes. All
Let's-
right.
I feel like we should start off with Dillon's questions.
Okay.
Sure. So I had 2 or 3 here that I wanted to go over. And I think the first one I think is a really good one. And it actually doesn't have too much to do with the athlete side of things, more so a coaching side. But I think it's important for athletes to hear about how some of this should go, because I think that a lot of people struggle with this. And I know that, Seth brought up a good point of just like kind of doing vibe checks and making sure that people are wanting to be on the roster and not just kind of there because they feel like that you're a nice person and they like you and, all these things. And those are great pieces, but, we want to make sure that they have the trust, because I know that as coaches, speaking for everyone here, but I think that I feel confident in saying that we all want people to be here just because they want to be here, not because we sold them into something or made them feel like they were going to get something that they're not going to get, etc. So this question was, is it hard not to get upset when athletes leave or switch coaches? How do you all handle this?
Who wants to kick it off?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. You guys tell me who you want to go first, and
I have a response.
Oh,
Yeah,
then you
go
kick it
Seth.
off. Who wants to kick it
Yeah.
off?
Who wants to kick it off? I'm like, please sign me up.
Seth, kick it off.
Well, actually, it's actually kind of funny because I just recently had an athlete leave me that was with me for over 2 years.
Oh, wow.
But I was actually really proud of her for making that decision for herself, because I knew that she would be better served. We had been through so much together that we were at that point where our communication had been broken because there had been trust broken on both ends. And so we had multiple conversations. We had a phone call once, and I remember telling her, like, at the end of the day, I want you to do what's best for you and make that decision where you feel you're going to succeed and be the most comfortable. And at that time, she assured me she wanted to stay. And I said, great, sounds good. I will love to have you for as long as you want to be here. But if you ever feel like this isn't the right direction for you, I want you to take that step for yourself. And so I think for me, when athletes leave, I don't think it's necessarily, I don't get upset as long as the communication around them leaving is done well. When people ghost me, just don't respond, fall off the face of the earth, that's basically the only time I get upset. As long as it's communicated with me, I know that they're making a decision that they feel is best for themselves at the end of the day. I would like, before, if they're having thoughts of leaving, to communicate it and give me feedback, see where we can improve. But at the end of the day, I always want everyone to make a decision that they feel like is going to serve them the most.
It's a great answer.
I agree. I feel like I haven't had anyone who I have people go ghost. Not recently, but like when I first started getting into my coaching, it was way common to get ghosted because these athletes are usually younger athletes in terms of their experience with coaches and experience within fitness. And so sometimes I know that they give up on themselves and their journey. That's why they stop checking in and stop just communicating with me on WhatsApp. But I haven't had anyone leave or ghost me and I find them on another team. I usually have experience with them communicating with me that they're going a separate way or they want time off and it's usually
Mhm.
for mental health
Yeah.
purposes. And if it's for mental health purposes, we have worked through it and talked through it. And I want them to go the separate way to benefit themselves towards their mental health, because mental health is so important. And like, if that's not optimal for you throughout your fitness journey, then your fitness journey will suffer as well. But I haven't had anyone just not communicate with me and then leave for another coach.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say pretty much what Cecilee was like outlining is what I've experienced as well. I haven't had athletes that I've been with for a long time just like ghost me. It's more so like within that first month that they'll leave without any explanation. And like, I wouldn't say I get upset, but it is one of those things where it's like, dang.
It's more like it's sad.
Yeah.
And I
believe in
think
them.
when people also ghost you, it's more so you worry about them because we care about these people so much. And so when you don't hear from someone that you've been communicating with for a couple weeks, you're like, what's wrong? Did something
Mhm.
horrible happen? And there's always that fine line of checking in on them and then also like not checking in on them because sometimes people just need their space. I always like to send
Right.
like a message if I haven't heard from someone after a week and a half. I'll be like, is everything okay? What's going on? Just know if you need anything, I'm here to support you. And generally, either they respond and we get back on track or I never hear back from them.
And it's funny because well, it's not funny, but if you don't hear back, like I'll even send another message a week after, but the fine line is not blowing their phone up, because if they
Mhm.
gave up and you tried, well, they gave up. And hopefully they'll come
Well,
back.
it's
We
not
care
even
for them.
sometimes it's not even that they gave up. Sometimes really horrible life events happen.
Yeah.
I have found that in some athletes. Those people generally respond and explain everything, but that's why I walk that fine line and I allow people some time to follow up with them just because I know that they could be struggling with something greater than what I could actually provide assistance with, and
Mhm.
they need that space and they don't want to think about
Right.
coaching or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that so my answer is the same because I agree with everything you guys said, but to expound on it a little bit, I've been doing this for a long enough timeline that I have had this like quite a lot. And on the other end, I've had it in reverse where I'm in this position. This is sort of a self-prescribed position, so I'm not sure if I'm out to lunch or not, but I'm starting to, like Braden at Team Miller, and like all these guys that I'm working with are really starting to work with lots of pros. They're executing on the highest level, and I'm not there yet, but I'm starting to knock on the door. And this actually just happened to me recently, where two of my best athletes, who I cared a lot about, felt like it would be better for them to do well in the pro standings, and then one of them to get a pro standing if they went with Braden. So, like I'm not gonna lie, that stings because I think that if it didn't bother us, that's a good sign that someone's maybe leaning towards psychopathic tendencies. Because if you hear, essentially that's like a devalue of your service in the moment is what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So anytime you're devalued and you feel devalued, you're going to receive some negative emotion. And I think that if you took that feedback and were like, yeah, fuck those people, and you actually didn't care, I think that that's probably not the best path to be on. However, at the end of the day, I always want the best for people. And because of having some experience, I also know that it's very unlikely usually about us.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes like, we're imperfect creatures.
Yeah.
I've said the wrong things. I've probably messed up protocols, or, I'm going to continue to do that because it's two humans working together, and humans are not without error. So sometimes you do make a goof up and you might pay the price, and, you might lose an athlete, or, maybe you just didn't land the plane the way that you thought, or maybe you didn't deliver. And sometimes it's because things didn't go the way. Maybe they were part to play in that, where things weren't perfect, and that just kind of causes a little bit of, it taints the vision into the future. where
Mhm.
it's like that's what Cecilee said, there were sort of some problems. And sometimes it's easier just to like leave that behind,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's no different than if you're in a very serious relationship and something traumatic happens. Some people can kind of look at that and go, let's sort this mess out and make changes, and it works. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you know what, I can't let go of that snake from the past, and we need to move on to our own direction. So it's very rarely about us. It's mostly life changes and just different vision changes that the person
Mm-hmm.
has. They're just trying to carry out their life the way that they would best for themselves, which is what they should do.
Mm-hmm.
Also, to finish, been doing this long enough to know, sometimes, a lot of times, if you treat people right, they'll come back.
Mhm.
Because I remember 5 years ago having a client leave or an athlete leave and feeling like really upset, and you know and then just talking myself through, like, it's going to be okay, and there's always more people to work with, and they're going to do great, in this new path. And then 2 years later, it's like, hey, I'm back. And they might fill
Mm-hmm.
you in like, hey, I was going through this crazy shit in my life, I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. And that's sort of what's happened to me multiple times
Mm-hmm.
now. And it kind of gives you that aha, like, yeah, everyone's just out here doing their best
Yeah.
in some sense. And sometimes we miss the mark, and
Mm-hmm.
our best isn't enough, and that's fair enough. But most people are just trying to be happy, get results, and form a relationship with someone that they either do or at one time trusted to guide them.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously it stings, but at the end of the day, carrying yourself professionally is always going to be
Mhm.
Yeah. And I
the
think
way.
that something that's important to clarify is I agree. We definitely, it stings when an athlete leaves, but I don't feel like any of us are ever upset with the athlete. The
No.
negative emotion isn't towards the athlete themselves. It's more so oh man, like, could have I done better here? It's always
Mhm.
that self-reflection moment where
Right.
it
And
stings.
sometimes what you need is not what you want.
Mhm.
And I do exit interviews, and that's
Mhm.
been a useful tool for me, because you can usually sort that out, where
Yeah.
again, sometimes it was maybe something I did or
Mhm.
didn't do. And it's like, well, at least we can talk about that, and I can learn from it, and it stings, and I'm upset at myself that I missed
Mhm.
the mark for you. But here's some recommendations, here's some
Mhm.
great people, like, and let's make this as positive
As
as it can,
possible.
Mhm.
as it can be. And I think, like me being on the phone with someone and them saying, you know, um, we didn't get to compete this year because of some health issues, and I kind of was giving you a shot to see what we could do. And I actually do believe that we could have done something great. But now that I have this very long off season because of some stuff, I feel like, Braden or like Cam Cheek, that was the conversation I
Mhm.
had 2 days ago, would be two guys maybe better to lead me with that experience. And as a logical person, I'm on the phone thinking like, yeah, this sucks. But at the
Mhm.
same time, like, I would never feel comfortable. The way I always try and look at things is I would never feel comfortable getting up in front of a group of my peers and sort of dismissing all those ideas as
Mhm.
incorrect,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? Because it's like, I understand where you're coming
Mhm.
from, and I knew you were giving me a shot. And sometimes the winds of time just shift, and our plan initially that we had didn't work out. So now that just changed the map for you.
Mhm.
So you're making a new vision quest, and
Yeah.
I'm not part of that, unfortunately, and I understand that. But like Seth said, it's never the upset about like, oh, you, like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
upset at you. It's just more so like, hey, because I think then we all reflect, at least a sane person, I think,
Yeah.
reflects inward, and it's like, what did I do? What could I do
Mhm.
better? Where did I miss the mark? What am I lacking? And I
Mhm.
have a bad tendency to turn that into a negative spiral if I allow it. So that's like my hurdle to manage psychologically. So I think at the end of the day, if you care for people and want the best for them, that's the best way through in any of
I
these
agree.
situations.
Yeah.
I
And it
agree.
does take a lot of courage for the athlete to communicate that,
Mhm.
especially
Big
in
facts.
that
Yes.
situation.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
in a way, like there's so much respect that they have for you to
Right.
say
Mhm.
that, but also for themselves.
I,
Which is
I was I was proud of them for that,
yeah,
actually, because that is very difficult to get on a call and saying like,
Mhm.
I really like you, and I think you're a really smart
Yeah.
guy. I think that you're going to get to where you got to go,
Mhm.
but maybe just for right this minute, I'm feeling like my heart is calling me to some better choices, and
Yep.
we don't get to choose what grips us.
Mhm.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and
Mhm.
that's not just with coaches, that's just in life in general. Like, you're walking down the street, and you might see a food, a person, a place or thing, something that interests you. It just sort of grips you. I call that destiny. I
Mhm.
don't really know what else to call it, but
I like that.
Like some things just pull to us. They just have this interest. And, using fitness as an example, I'm the same thing. I got into bodybuilding essentially right from obesity. And, I lost 50 pounds and was completely still obese, but in my head, I was like hooked. I loved the training. I knew like this is something different than I've done before. I have an interest to this. It's not going to let go of me. Lo and behold, it didn't. So if an athlete's feeling that way, they're going to do better anyway.
Right.
And that meant that if they just stayed under the guise of kindness or false compassion, we weren't going to be able to do as well as we could have anyway, because that trust is not going to be as deep rooted.
It's not
as
100% there. Yeah.
And another way to look at it too is with this athlete, like he still supports you so much, even though he's with someone else, and you still support him, and y'all want to see each other thrive and grow, even if it's not together. It's like relationship.
It is.
So you and
yeah.
your partner may be thriving now, but in the future, y'all break up and y'all are better off alone or with other people, but you still want to see the other person happy.
That's right.
Yeah. I think it takes like a degree of emotional maturity and
Yeah.
awareness there. And like whenever an athlete comes to me with, like, hey, I've been thinking about X, Y, and Z, and if it's like leaving, I always make sure that I thank them for even coming to me and voicing
Yes.
that, because I think it's so important to like reinforce that positively with everybody. Like even if they're leaving me, it's like, thank you so much for trusting me enough to tell me that you want to leave me. Like
Yeah.
that, like it's something that I really strive to like cultivate in my team is just making sure that I let them know I am grateful for you guys. Like y'all make the team. I lead it, but y'all make it. And so having that trust established in the communication, even if they are leaving, it's like, of course I want to see them thrive. So if they're being pulled somewhere else, like you said, I want to support that.
Yeah.
Me too. When you guys want to give a shot at the next question, or do you want me to do a few mine still?
Noah, do you want to give yours?
Sure. This one's kind of in like the same vein. And somebody was asking, how do you overcome mental health barriers and strive for success with no support? So it's kind of a two-faceted question there.
Yeah. Who wants to go first?
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yeah. How do you overcome mental health barriers and strive for success with no support?
Well, I feel like at the end of the day, you have to be your own best friend. You have to support yourself the most, even if you're surrounded by people that support you. You have a goal in mind for a reason because you believe you can achieve it, even if it seems out of reach. I think taking actions or setting your day or surroundings up for that success, even if there's no individual person or people to support you in that way, you're still supporting yourself. And if you support yourself at the end of the day, that's all you need. It can be lonely, especially in bodybuilding when you're first getting in. Most of the time, I think we have all experienced this when we first got into fitness or bodybuilding. We were the only people in our group that really understood what that was and how much sacrifices it took. And there were battles within communication with others or time not spent with others that you had to overcome with them. But you knew what you were doing for yourself. Personally, when I first got into fitness, it was just myself, and my parents were supportive, but they were also scared because of like the nutrition side of things and I was also going through anorexia kind of phases. So it was just an uneasy time. But
did you feel like that mental health, like it sounded like this question, like this person is going through something mentally, like they're having a mental health crisis or struggle, but they want to strive for success. So is it possible to do both at the same time, or do you need to address the mental health first?
I think addressing the mental health is striving for success. You have to do that first because you can't you can't achieve true success if your mental health is taking a back burner. Mental health is such it pulls you. If you're in a bad place, you can't ignore it because you always feel in that bad place. Even if you act like you're not, you still feel that way. You still have to look in the mirror at home at night and realize you look at yourself and realize like you have these issues that you have to overcome. But by overcoming those or facing those, you are taking a step forward towards your success. So I do feel like mental health is first, but it's not necessarily driving you away from success, because some people might think if I focus on my mental health and now I'm taking a step back from the goals that I have, but you're not, because you're actually stepping towards them.
That was beautifully said.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Do you guys have any thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts.
I thought you were gonna start. I thought you were gonna kick it off. That's why I like paused. I was like, here he goes. But then I took
So I would say that the question's kind of twofold, as Noah said, but I think so when we're in a state of dysregulation, which is, I agree, it sounds like this person is in a sort of mentally dysregulated state, and that could mean a variety of things and severities, but I sort of relate to that. You know, I've had a difficult 3 months myself, and I'm prone to depressive proclivities if I don't manage myself. And I think that when you're feeling massive amounts of negative emotion, it becomes really easy to put off the small stuff as benign that would really help. So, really good philosopher Carl Jung had a saying something like, if you're in pain, get the simple affairs in order and make something beautiful. Jordan Peterson's, one of his like claims to fame was like, clean your room, although it sounds really simple. When you watch the Limitless movie with Bradley Cooper, where he takes like the smart person drug, he goes from being like an underachiever. He takes that smart person drug. And I always found this very fascinating about this movie. He locks himself in his apartment, which had pizza boxes and stuff all piled up, and he cleaned his apartment. He didn't start making all that money first. He didn't like go down to Wall Street right away. He got his apartment straightened up. He got his closet straightened up. He got his nutrition straightened up. He got his attire straightened up. So he cleaned himself up. He got a shave. He got a haircut. He started to look good. He started to invest in himself to the degree that he could, right? So he had no money, right? No resources. But he started small, and then it's kind of, obviously it's a movie, but you showcase that through and kind of see how those are actually the building blocks. But when you're feeling very bad, it's easy to go skip all those steps and envision, how do I get to like being on Wall Street or whatever that goal is at the end of the tunnel. And you can forget sort of all the small steps that actualize those goals. And kind of like Danielle said, putting time into yourself, I think, is moving towards the target. And then sometimes expectation management has to take place, because to say that, okay, well, I have to put some focus into these areas because I'm lacking, that might slow down the process towards that other goal. For instance, if you're planning on competing, you're 24 weeks out and you're having something really goes awry in your life, which throws a big stressor into it that isn't just going to go away in a week or two, because it's going to need some sorting and dealing with, saying, well, I'm going to put off that show, extend that timeline 6 or 8 months, feels like, Danielle said, putting it off. But in reality, it's actually not, because you're building the versions of you into the future that can handle that amount of stress and not have to pull out of the prep, right? So some of the things that I'm stressed about now would have completely destabilized me 3 years ago, like very bad. And, you know, I'm proud of myself, because although some of it stings, right? Just like anyone else, we're going through what we're going through, but you can kind of learn to carry that load a little bit more efficiently. So I think just like paying attention to yourself and not just allowing all of the things that would help become benign, you know, so like make sure your nutrition, are you getting proper sleep? And that all sounds very cliche, but unfortunately, those are sort of the building blocks that like allow us to help ourselves. And then just very quickly, not having the support, I think, is something that should also be looked at as like a problem to solve. Not so much like, oh, I don't have it and I'll never have it. That's what that language sort of sounds like. It sounds like to me that there's some, and I understand this, some self-value and worth issues, because it's like, I hear like, I'm always like this and this is how it's going to be. And that's a very sort of toxic place for your mind to
They're
live,
making it their identity that they don't have support instead of like,
you're bang on. You're bang on. We need to strive for that. And I think that I'm an introvert, right? So I can relate to this. People that have at least one person in their life, like if we look, and we can look at parental roles or even like literature on psychology for friendship roles, community, people who have nobody die earlier and are more sad. And that's pretty crystal clear. And it doesn't take a whole bunch for a person to feel supported, actually. And sometimes that comes with having something to say and not wanting to say it. Because if there's a self-value issue, it means that you're going to have a hard time advocating for yourself. So if you have people around you and you've now changed your vision quest, let's say, and you want to compete, or you have these goals that are now new and exciting to you, but no one else can understand them yet, I think people just sort of make these shifts and expect everyone to turn the train with them. And I don't even know if they expect that like consciously. I think it's just a subconscious thing that we end up doing, where having those conversations and saying like, look, this is really important to me. I don't even know why yet. It just sort of gripped me. And I know that it's going to pull me in until I figure out what's in this mess. I need to get in this room and, like an escape room. I need to go through everything and see what I can do here. And I would really appreciate your support. And I know that, like if we use Danielle's case, I know you have some worry about some of these things that, I've struggled with nutritional strategies in the past, but for some reason, this is calling to me and I want to do it safely and healthfully. And if you have concerns, I would love for you to bring them to me and we can chat about them. Most people abdicate that entire step and I've been a proponent of doing this my entire life, and then complain we don't have any support. But when you think about it, it was only a shared vision in your mind. You never shared the vision with them. So how are they supposed to know? And that's because when you have self-value issues, it's hard to dictate a vision because you're not even sure you believe that can all happen or that it should happen to you, right?
Yeah.
So the mental health, and then even there's, I was reading some interesting literature, like how much happier people are that start random conversations. My wife is like this. And I think it's super weird. And I'm much more negative emotion filled than she is. So, you can take that for what it is. We could be on a train somewhere random traveling and she'll just ask a person about their bag or, it's a nice
Oh
coat
my gosh.
stuff.
My
And
partner's like that too. We cannot go anywhere without like
social butterfly.
Yeah. I just stand there. I'm like, no.
However, it's pretty clear that I think like 94% of those interactions are positively taken and add to your life. And that alone, when you feel like you have nobody, even from being able to, you're in the gym locker room feeling kind of bad. You saw someone like, hey, how was your workout? Oh, it was really good. What about you? I'm prepping for my first bodybuilding show. It's been a little bit difficult, but like I'm getting it done. You'd be surprised. People will just chalk that up as benign. Like, well, what that's going to do for me? I'm feeling very terrible. That's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And no, it might not be the whole thing. But you'd be surprised if you pay attention to yourself, you'll leave that room being like, oh, I was okay to share my goal with a stranger. And sometimes with a stranger, it's easier because you're not fearing the judgment. Same reason that sometimes it's easier for people to talk in therapy because they don't give a rat's ass about the person on the other end and their opinion necessarily of them as much as they would someone who knows all the intricacies of our life. And lastly, I think that it's important to make sure that you are choosing people to be in your life because they do want the best for you. So when you're hearing their actions and watching them carry themselves out, actions are set in belief, and belief is rooted in action. So it doesn't really matter what they say, it matters what they do. So if you're giving multiple opportunities and communicating well to be supported, and you're getting kind of this, why do you need to do that? And these type of like responses, that can be solved via communication, or sometimes it just has to be solved by understanding that there's reasons why people always don't want the best for us, and it's not up to us to dictate how people act. But we get to make our own choices of whether we want those people in our circle, providing energy to our system, so to speak. So I hope that wasn't too long and made some sense, but
No,
that's
it
kind
totally
of
does.
where I stand on that.
That was perfect, honestly. Like
Yeah.
you covered everything that I was thinking about. So
You
feel
just
like-
agree.
yeah.
Agree.
It's
Perfect.
I
It was
always
beautifully
feel like
said.
our conversations in here like parallel to even just like my life experiences. Like what you were just saying this morning, I was having some I was just a little down on myself, and I was taking my dog for a walk, and I was just like in my head, like spiraling. Like I could feel it that like my energy walking was like not good. And I came to this driveway where this car was backing out. So me and my dog like stopped, and he was sitting there waiting, and I was waiting for this car to go. And the guy like rolled down his window and he said, "Good morning." And then he said, "Y'all can go, you can keep walking, I'll wait for you." And just that like little interaction, like it was a second of an interaction, it pulled me out of my head so quick, because I was like, "Oh, thank you, good morning." And like it was such a little, like you're saying, benign conversation. But the rest of my walk, I was like, "Ah, it is a good morning. Like the sun is out. I'm so lucky to be here." And it just immediately like changed my day. And that guy like probably just went about his day, his commute, driving to work, not even thinking twice about it, but it impacted me. So it's so cool to like hear you speak about it on a large like psychological scale, like a study. And then I'm just in my head like, huh, that literally happened to me this morning.
Yeah, that's that community sort of piece that I
Mhm.
think we're oftentimes missing. And I think that for us in our careers, sometimes it's even easy to miss because we actually have great circles of people, but it's hard to separate sometimes your peer work from your like community work, I guess, like in a
Totally.
relationship with someone,
Mhm.
right? So like we're all talking about goals and what we're doing and coaching rosters and competing and clients and boom, 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 and podcasting and all this stuff. And sometimes you can get mixed up for just like, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to support you?
The simple
As
stuff.
someone in your circle. And
Mhm.
I kind of had this whenever I heard this in my early work sales career. One of my bosses had a saying that was like, he would call you into the office for how's she going. That's what he would call it. And they were either real. That's the funny thing about them, is they were either you're something you were doing real well or something really bad. So now I always repeat that term. But even some of my people in my closest in my circle, it's like, hey, let's take an inventory of how you're doing. Oh, you're not doing that well. Oh, okay. Why is that? No, okay, well, is there anything that we could do to support you, or is there anything you're missing from us that would help you with these particular struggles? Maybe not, right? So you sort through all that, and you'd be surprised just what sort of and I do this with my wife, where we take 90 minutes a week where we just talk, and it's sort of about all the responsibility, right? So it's like, who's going to look after these house responsibilities in the next foreseeable future? Who's going to look after these financial responsibilities? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? And you just sort of sort that all out. And I found that for me, communication being one of the best tools that helped me like elevate my life to a position where I don't feel bad near as much as I once did.
Yeah.
And that must be something running in the air. I think there's always like a seasonal shift too. So I noticed a lot of people are kind of like going through these seasonal shifts in some sense. And I've definitely been leaning on some microdosing psilocybin. So that's definitely
That helps.
a tool that I like to use. But I think there's multiple ways out of that trap that person is in. You just have to start getting a little creative with how you look for the exits. It's probably not going to appear as obvious.
Yeah.
Things that are the most obvious probably are not what's going to help.
It could be the smallest things.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love it. Awesome. So I am going to share my first question, which is, what is everyone's biggest struggle within bodybuilding? And I thought that was a good question because we could all answer.
Sure.
Yeah.
I want one of y'all to go first.
Seth needs to go first.
Oh man, I went first the first time.
You want me to
What is
restate
my
it?
biggest
Yeah.
struggle in bodybuilding?
Within
Bodybuilding. I'm thinking.
it can be overall. It doesn't have to be in the moment.
So I think my biggest struggle has always been committing to it 100%. If I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys, I love bodybuilding, but I also love so many other things. And so I've always felt this, and I still struggle with this, the all or nothing mindset, where it's either I'm all in or I'm all out. And so either I'm going to be 100% on everything, crushing it, and I feel like a bodybuilder, and bodybuilding's all I can think about, or I'm kind of bodybuilding, kind of hitting my protocols, but focusing on other areas of my life. And so that's always been my biggest struggle, is the all or nothing mindset of being confident in the work that I'm putting in towards bodybuilding, while it not being what is the number one thing on my mind. Because I think that a lot of other people can relate to this, that if it's not in the forefront with bodybuilding, sometimes you feel like you are slacking, you're not achieving as much, you aren't giving everything. But the fact of the matter is if you're hitting your protocols, you're training hard as fuck, and putting your all in during the off season and in the improvement season as well, you are going to be taking those steps forward. But it's realizing that it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been my biggest struggle.
I think that's so valuable. Like, I appreciate you being honest and just saying that that is something that you struggle with, because I do think that's very relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And I would agree that that's also my struggle on the extreme side, like on the other side, where I do go all in and I'm willing to let everything else in my life slide
Mm-hmm.
because bodybuilding is at the forefront. But when I come out of the contest prep, when I'm done with the shows, like, I'll have that moment where I'm like, damn, I feel empty. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I achieved my goals in bodybuilding, but what about everything else?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's my struggle. And like, I know we've talked about it before, that there's a balance, but then I beat myself up. Like, I have the mental like struggle of beating myself up because I feel like I'm not 100, and I've lived at 100, so I know what it feels like. So when I'm not there, I get guilty. I'm like, well, I know what I could be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still working through that. I don't have like a neat way to wrap that up, but I appreciate you saying that, because I struggle with the all or nothing mindset
Mm-hmm.
and just wanting to put bodybuilding above everything else, even though I know it's not going to work out for me. That doesn't serve me as a human, as a whole person.
Mm-hmm.
I love it too, because I think in all our own ways, we struggle with the same thing. And like, 6 weeks ago, my biggest struggle was finding love for the sport and bodybuilding again. But now that I have it, since like I started prep a week ago, I sense myself wanting to
Isolate.
yeah. And I know I have a better balance on it than I did when I first started. I do know that for my mental health right now, with the season that I'm in for my mental health growth, I do need more isolation, because I used to hate like hanging out with myself, and now I'm loving it again. But I also know if I push it too far, what that looks like, and how bodybuilding is up here, but you also take another dip in your mental health again, and you have to dig yourself out of that hole. So in a way, I agree.
Yeah, I think I don't struggle with that as much anymore as when I was younger. I mean, to a degree, I think that bodybuilding does that, and I think social media amplifies that, because you're always seeing like everyone's killing it, right? Which I remember being in the bodybuilding industry as a naive amateur, natural bodybuilder, years ago, and I remember like missing Christmas dinners, like eating my Tupperwares, like 150-pound guy, just acting like a complete asshat for no reason at all. And I remember like going to my first Olympia, 2014, 2015, my first Arnold. And I remember going to like Club XS after the Olympia. And I'm like watching all these Olympians do massive amounts of drugs and alcohol and fucking eating food. Literally every single person that was competing, except for 2 people in the entire show. And I remember it like crumbled my worldview, because I was like, what the fuck? That guy's like on his YouTube talking about this shit, and this is what he's doing, and it just like, it's sort of like, it made it easy to not maybe struggle as much with that all in response, because I realized like, well, everyone's half full of shit. So they're only showing you what they want to show you. So I understood that. I think my current biggest struggle is probably like stems from self-comparison, which is from a lack of self-worth, let's say, and because I didn't take a conventional path to bodybuilding coaching, let's say, or as conventional as some would state it, I think that I've had to prove myself, and anytime I start having to prove myself, it can become like a value exchange, because some of my trauma is something like, if things went really well, that's how they were supposed to go, and if they didn't go well, then it's your fault. You know, so like that's like my trauma. So I can get really negative self-talk rolling in at very rapid rates that I can't escape. And then it has me looking for validation and, you know, different things that I shouldn't be seeking. And now I can sort of catch myself. And that's what I'll finish this with is, I sort of look at bodybuilding now like human building, because I understand that as my body's improved, which is still nothing to, you know, stop traffic, but my physique has improved as a consequence of my mind. Like I can literally map it out. Like if I take pictures over the last 10 years, I look at them, I'm like, well, in this phase of your life, there wasn't as much progress. And what did you have going on? Oh, that was not the best, pretty dark time. Look here. And it's like, oh, every time I like leveled this up, I got stronger. And just like with bodybuilding, I think that people want results very quickly. And I understand why, because if you're in pain, you're not feeling well, you're having a lot of negative emotion, which is super unpleasant. You want to just like find the thing, like what's the pill or the thing or the strategy or the journaling or the guru or the book, podcast or the mental health thing, or, you know, anything I can do to kind of fix this, versus looking at it like a very steady progression where you're going to have to wrestle yourself probably for the rest of your life. And you'll get more proficient at wrestling. So you won't stay down as long when you get pinned, and you won't get pinned as often. But that doesn't mean, and this is a good reminder for me, because it feels really painful if you do put work in, and 6 months later, that snake pops up again in a different aspect of your life. And that can produce a lot of negative emotion, because you're like, I thought I dealt with you and I worked very hard to deal with you. And now you're back here. And it can make you kind of like push away and want to ignore it more than you may have in the past. But that just goes to show you that you need to dive forward, not back, which is very difficult to do in practice, easy to do in theory.
I like that you use the picture analogy, because as I've said, like I was struggling with my love for the sport, and not even just the sport, just the process. I recently have been mad at my old self for like falling out of love because the progress that I didn't make that I could have made if I were really there. But I recognize, like you just said, like there's seasons that you're going to go through where things are going to fall. And it's not that they're failing, they're just in a spot because your mental health or other places have to evolve further during this time. And that's okay.
So I got something just to finish with that, because it's interesting. I think you guys will find it interesting. A female struggle with this definitely more, because you're higher in trait compassion, which is tied to empathy and also agreeability. And I noticed coaching a lot of females, what happens is they'll spend a year doing something that 11 months of those 12 months throughout the year, they knew deep down that they should be doing something else or with somebody else. And we can use that as relationships, coaching relationships, style of training, style of eating, how much you're eating, like literally everything. And then they get so fed up of it, where now they're done with it, whether that's a person, coach, style of training, again, anything. I'm fucking done. And the thing about that is you've already built up a big pile of resent and malevolence and a shame, guilt, and blame spiral. Right. So then even when you go into the new thing, now I've got a new coach, and maybe there was reason that you had your skepticism about what was going on, and we just didn't speak up and say anything. What ends up happening is I catch people doing this to me all the time, but because I catch it now, I can tell them. And when I tell them, they're like, holy fuck, I am doing that. Where I'll tell them, like, I know you didn't have the best last coaching experience, and it's been a couple months here, but I feel like you're pressuring me to make up the time that you feel that you lost in the past, because you're upset at yourself for not being here a year ago, because it's probably where you wanted to be, or some version of this. And we need to work on some of that and deal with the swallowing of the bitterness and work on that resent and letting go, because otherwise it's so easy to get into a blame, shame, regret cycle where, you know, you have one off planned meal. Well, now look at it. This is happening again. This is what happened last time. It always happens. And you just drive yourself into the ground. So I think just kind of always being upfront and honest about your needs is going to be the best way to like avoid that past blame. But I certainly understand how it happens. I don't actually feel that much in my bodybuilding anymore. I did. I'm struggling with it more in my business career because, you know, the saying like, what you know now, if you knew now, what you knew then, etc.
Yeah.
Or I knew that then what I know now. Sorry. I feel that a lot because I've paid a lot of expensive lessons in the last 2 years. Those lessons were like created the person who now knows how to solve themselves out of those problems. But I wasn't that person before. But it's really easy to look back and think like, well, I could have made more money here. I could have not lost that money there. I could have helped that person here. You know, I could have provided better here because now I know. But the thing is we can only go forward, not backwards, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Steps forward. Life moves forward.
It always moves forward. Always, always.
I got one more good one maybe that we could dive into. How do you manage the head game, especially when in off season during a building season? Lots of work to do. I know I have to play the long game, yet comparing my today to people's stage look, prep look, IG feed, etc. The whole comparing yourself at chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 7, if you will. Do you have any advice or personal experience on how to deal with this?
I feel like Cess got really excited.
I did get really
excited.
excited.
Start off.
These ones are always my favorite.
You can nail it.
I've struggled with it. I have athletes that come to me. They struggle with it constantly. They ask me, why am I not here? I feel discouraged when I look on social media. And I think it all comes down to what we were talking about previously, for the most part, is learning to love the journey and the process and the work that you're putting in every single day, as opposed to the results that you're receiving or going to be getting. I think a lot of people assume that once they reach X physique goal, they're immediately going to be happy, and all their problems with body dysmorphia, self-comparison, everything like that is going to be gone. And let me tell you, that could be further from the truth.
Yep.
Just because you reached X physique goal doesn't mean that suddenly you're going to feel all the self-worth, all the confidence, everything. What matters is the work that you're putting in today and focusing on loving the work that you're putting in and going and fulfilling yourself and your wants and your needs through the work, as opposed to the goals or the physique itself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I also think that, you know, I started telling clients like, what the hell do you know what you want? You know?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
I kind of tell people like, don't be so sure that you know how to think.
Yep.
Because thinking is very difficult and it takes a lot of practice. And people that have practice who are much smarter than me still have things to learn, right? So take this, I can take a personal example, with myself, just some of the things I've been struggling with. I started asking myself, okay, if there was a pain response to that, it means that the map got disrupted and it isn't going the way that you would prefer to see it go. Okay, fair enough. Why do you want to see it go that way? And then sometimes that could bring forth like I'm not sure, actually. And when that happens, you can usually ask another follow-up question, something like, so for me, it was like, why do you want that thing to happen? Was it because you want it to happen because that's what you want? Or is it because of what is perceived that will do for you?
Yes.
Or to you, or for you, I guess. And I realized like, oh, I think there's something there. That's not good. That's the shadow self that needs examining. And then I have to reevaluate like, no, this isn't about that stuff. It's not about that stuff. It's about this other stuff. And when you do that, I think you can just like reset the map so that you're a little bit more on track with where you are and where you need to go versus like trying to gauge your value systems on what everyone else has. The thing is, this is a very normal human struggle. There's been some good literature on this. If you take a bunch of people, especially in like a busy city in let's say downtown Austin, for example, if we were to stop, like, you know, when those stoplights kind of build up, I was down there at Moody Theater like a couple of years ago for a lecture, which was really good. And the streets were very busy. It was a busy night out. So there's like sometimes 40 people standing on like waiting for like to cross a light. If you're to put someone on that corner as an experiment and have them look up at the sky for long enough, or at a specific object in the distance, over time, more and more people start to look. The reason that is because our eyes dictate human value. That's why we develop the whites in our eyes, so that when we're communicating, I know what you're up to because I know what you're focusing on. So if it's either like, should I pay attention? The reason that happens is because it's like, should I pay attention to that because something negative could happen if I'm not watching? Because we're way more sensitive to negative emotion. Example, there's a plane coming down. So I should probably run. That's bad.
Go.
You know, or is there a magic tree of bounty fruit there that someone's looking at that I don't want to miss the opportunity to pick, right? So with social media, taking that sort of evolutionary feature and putting a nuke bomb on it, because now it's not just the people in my community. It's not just, you know, like I started thinking about this, and I hope this doesn't come off the wrong way, but like in my home province, I'm probably the most known fitness person ever of all time. So,
That's
but
awesome.
I feel worthless, right? So if I take the social media version of reality, I kind of am, to be honest, because it's like
that's where you dictate your business, right?
The Cam Cheeks, there's all these guys, right, that are executing on like a higher level, let's say. So it's easy to get that self-comparison going. But if I compare to like how a normal community comparison would have always went for us, not doing so bad. But we don't focus on that. We focus on kind of what we don't have. So if you know that this is going to be one of the byproducts of the Western world, at least you can think yourself ahead of it to some degree. And that always helps me. It doesn't mean the feelings go away, but the good news is feelings don't have to dictate our actions. It's just difficult to not let that happen.
Well, with social media, I feel like it's particularly difficult because, like in your example, if we didn't have social media, you wouldn't know that you're not the greatest in the area, right? Like you would just know, like, I'm the best here. But the other thing too with social media, and like I know that this is cliche as well, but the algorithm like is constantly looking at what you're looking at, taking in what you're liking, spending time on, and then throwing more at you. So your explore page is tailored to what you like. So then you have this curated world. So if you're constantly looking at fitness posts, that's all you're going to see. And then if you're seeing all of these curated fitness posts and these fitness people and influencers, and that's all you see all day, like, of course, that's going to affect the way you feel about yourself. And I think people forget that. And we always say it, like, we're like, social media is a highlight reel. Don't believe everything you see on social media. But like, it's easy to forget that when you're just on there scrolling, and we dictate like most of our business through social media. So we have to have a presence on there. Like, that's how we run our businesses. That's how we attract our clients. But I've noticed, like, with my clients, a lot of them struggle with that comparison game as well, like, especially in the off seasons, because they're looking at people who are on prep. They're looking at stage shots. They're looking at the shows every weekend, wishing that was them when they have another year of growth to do. And they start to internalize that. And so for us, like, I think it's important to keep reiterating, even though we probably see it and say it 10 times a day, social media is not the real world. And you have to do a lot of self-reflection and like have that self-confidence that what you're doing on a daily basis is serving you, and not compare that to everybody else that you're seeing on social media, because you don't know their story. You don't know what they're doing, and their body could be photoshopped, or their body could be 10 years ahead of yours, or you know what I mean? Like, everybody's chapter, like the question was insinuating, is different. And you might think, like, I think you touched on this, you might think you want to look a certain way or see a certain number on the scale. Like, you might have a picture of your dream physique, but it's a perception, because I can tell you from like my own experiences, I have literally lived in my dream physique, like from when I was in college. And I was like, you know what? If I'm 120 pounds, like I think I'd be really happy. I've been 120 pounds and hated the way I looked. It didn't feel good. And I've literally lived in my body, like not liking the way that I looked. But like years ago, I would have loved it. Like years ago, if years ago Noah could see me today, she'd be like, what the heck? Look at you. But like day to day, me today, I'm like, oh, well, I don't look like an Olympian. Like I don't look like X, Y, and Z. And it's the comparison thing. So it's really easy to just start getting caught in that. And like we all do it too. Like we're not standing here on some pedestal saying don't do it. Like we do it as well. But just remember, like the social media stuff that you see is not real.
It also is time. You just have time. Like you have to work with time. Time is
Where you're at today.
yeah. Like you can't say myself. I can't wish I was Olympian. Like I can wish I was something, but I can't expect to look like an Olympian because I haven't put in the time to
Right.
achieve that. And so it's being realistic with yourself. You can't wish your way into looking a certain way today when you haven't done the work and time together to achieve that goal.
I think that's sort of, if we're talking about a pragmatic solution to get out of it. So I started thinking like, well, that's the exact opposite of how positive emotion is derived. Positive emotion is derived from you setting a proper value marker on a map and moving productively towards it. The setting of the goal is very important. We kind of went over that already, how like you have to ask yourself what you're up to. Why do I want that thing? And go through all that. Once you've done that, the best way to feel better is to start looking at like, okay, I want to be an Olympian. And then you ask yourself, we can take that extreme goal. I want to be an Olympian. Okay. On average, how many years does it take for Olympians to become Olympians? So on this end of the spectrum, we have maybe 4 years of like the hyper responding genetic elites, all the way up to usually 7, 10, 12. Right. So let's use an average of 7 years. I've been training very seriously. If this person's talking to themselves, it's like, I've been training very seriously for 3. Well, I'm 33% of the work put in to even start conceptualizing this as a goal. And of that 33%, is there anything I could improve inside of that? Is that all honky-dory? And you start kind of marking that down. It's like, sometimes I skimp on my cardio. Sometimes I do this. And you start just tackling those things. Maybe it's mindset stuff. Maybe it's personal relationship stuff. Maybe it's communication stuff. Maybe it's actual protocol stuff. It doesn't matter. And you start looking at, maybe it's your house's chaos. Clean up your room, literally. Don't live in a dysregulated state because it's not going to help you. So you start cleaning up these simple things, not making anything too benign. And as Danielle said, the time is going to pass anyway. And this is one thing that I'm pretty proud of myself at. So I have a birthday coming up in like 14 days, something like that, 15 days, my 32nd birthday. About 5 months ago, I told Braden, I want to be in the best shape of my life. 32nd birthday, I was jacked. And we started working towards that. I dropped off about 20 pounds. And now we're at this like tail end of, let's say, 6 more weeks left with some enhancements in and dieting. I have to diet very hard to lose body fat, very hard, like sub 2,000 calories for weeks. And I started to realize, like Noah said, I'm like in the mirror and I'm like, oh, my serratuses aren't quite in yet. Like, but when they are on my birthday, when I'm on that birthday trip, like that's going to fucking do it for me. And meanwhile, I started just having a conversation with myself. I noticed myself getting more irritable because I'm hungry all the time. My cardio is high enough. And I'm like, I'm not competing. And look at my 1-year transformation that I did last year with Braden's guidance. It's phenomenal. I'm very proud of it. And what if I just do the same thing for another year? And like, do I have to like kill myself right now? Is that the smartest thing? To get something that I'm probably not going to keep because I'm not going to sustain these protocols for months and months and months. And I'll just get the thing and it'll slip through my hands with quicksand. And really what I need is actually more muscle and I want to stay in better shape while progressing towards that goal. But I've already done that. Right. So I kind of told him, I was like, hey, and then we have all these thoughts, like as an athlete, tell him like, hey, this is hard for me to communicate because I feel like one piece of my head's just telling me, don't be a pussy, just starve, just fucking do it. And I have that built into me and I can absolutely hit that button if I need to. But I said, like, I kind of told him the same thing we were talking about with like the past, where I told Braden, I said, I feel like I've been unfairly pressuring you to give me the physique I want. Like I want to look like Thor from God of Thunder, like in one cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Or like now, because I decided it's now, and I'm a control freak. It's like, well, who decided that you should have that? Like Danielle said, like who decided that that was enough work and enough stimulus for that goal to arrive at your doorstep? And I started realizing like, no, actually what I need is to just do the same thing for 3 more years. And then I'll be 35 and probably look more closely to like what's in my head. And I won't have to have done a bunch of poisonous shit to get there. So I just kind of told him like, is it dumb if we bring my food up just a little bit? Like, I don't want to go into no bulking phase, but you know, slow down the rate of gain even, or just like work on, you know, recomposition with the pharmaceutical aspects from here on out. Because we've improved I've already dropped off 20 pounds of body fat. And he was like, man, it's so nice to hear you say this, because he felt it's just like, I was just going to keep killing you when I don't even want to, because I don't think it's like, I want to build your metabolism. I want to do all this stuff. Right. And we can't do that in 6, 10, 12 weeks. So the point is sometimes you have to expand your time horizon out. I learned this from some really good business mentors. The people that are most successful in anything, they have the ability to expand their time horizon out. That the person who can do that always wins. They always fucking win. And I struggle with that with my own personal endeavors. I'm very good at it for clients. I'm like other people map out like, hey, I can map you out a perfect map and this is going to be really good. As soon as I start doing it for myself, I'm like, oh, it's not here yesterday. Fuck, something's broken.
I know, dude.
And I'm trying to like optimize the plan so that it speeds things up. But anyway, so we all have those struggles, and it's just about managing it to the best of our abilities.
And I will say, if it arrived at your doorstep tomorrow, where's the fun in that? You didn't work towards it. Like, you wouldn't enjoy anything. And you would just want something else the next day. You have, like, it's fun to have to work towards something.
The fun is in the chase. Yeah.
Like a big time built for a struggle. There's a lot of great Greek mythology talking about, like Socrates talking about how every time the Romans and the Greeks had nothing to do but eat grapes and procreate, they would burn the place down just to see something happen that they could, you know, and this is very normal. People self-sabotage their entire life for this very reason.
We love chaos.
Absolutely.
Literally.
We like problems to solve. We're built for a struggle. And to Danielle's point, you know, I've heard this a lot more even on the business side of things, like, oh, if I just had $1 million, or like, oh, if I just had 100 grand, or if I had 10 grand, depends on where the person's at. It's like, really, you don't have it now. So you haven't put the work in to become the person and learn the lessons to have it. And you think that if a dragon carrying dumped a treasure on your doorstep of like $300 million, that your life is going to be set now and you have it all figured out. I can tell you right now that that's probably not going to happen.
Well, look at the people who
be maybe the worst thing possible for you.
Look at the people who win the lottery. Generally, their lives take not horrible a positive turn.
No, almost never. Actually. Same idea.
That was a good point.
It's really funny. I think we're all really good at doing it for other people, but when it comes to ourselves, me personally, the expanding timelines, that's something that's huge. That's something I'm working on personally because I'm going through it. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's exactly what you guys are saying, that I have to be willing to put in the work long term and love the process of getting to my goal rather than just trying to get to my goal.
Can I ask you why the rush though?
I think it comes down to comparison. I look at people that I know, like Jordan Fisher, who I know she's an anomaly, but like she wins her pro card in one go, wins her pro debut, goes to the Olympia. And now, of course, she has to work her way up in the Olympia. You know, like she got third call outs at the O, but that's her first O. So like this year, I'm so excited to see her do her pro shows, go back to the Olympia and like work her way up. And it's like, I so badly want to be at the Olympia. I want to be in that race, but I have to run my own race. I'm so busy looking at other people's races and looking at other pros' stats that I'm not focused on my own race, my own journey, and I think that it's my detriment, it's my struggle, because for my clients, I can tell them, you're not ready to step on stage, you're not competitive yet. But when it comes to myself, I so badly just want to be there
Do you put
already.
your value in your goal more? Do you put too much value in your goal, in your self-worth?
I would
Maybe that goal.
say I'm very goal driven, and like I said earlier, I'm very much willing to put that goal above everything else. I knew, like, from the moment that I stepped on stage for the very first time back in 2017, I knew, like, this was it. Like, I was like, I'm a competitor. And even that year, 2017, I was a first time competitor. I was like, I'm going to go to the O, like, I'm going to go to the Olympia. And it's like, that was way back then. And the goal has never changed, but I have had to learn to pivot and adapt and keep failing and learning. And I guess I'm just hungry for that, like, that lesson again, maybe. Like, I wouldn't mind stepping on stage and losing, because then I would have a fire. I don't want to lose, obviously. Like, nobody wants to lose, but I just love competing so much. I just want to get there. I don't know if that answers your question. Maybe I do put too much stock in it.
Well, I know for me, and I think that sometimes athletes are misunderstood. I did a lot of digging into like some of the sports psychology about Olympic athletes, and like something like 85% of Olympic athletes, if you asked, you could take the cohort of the group who got second or third and said to them, you didn't get the gold, but you performed very well for your country. And if we could change that and you got the gold, but you had 10 years left of life, would you take it? Like 85% of them said yes. Inversely, if you took the gold medal winners and asked them that if they could keep the gold medal, but they only could extend their life 10 more years, or go to second or third and extend their life to natural causes, they're keep like 85% of them are also keeping that gold. So they choose literal death. Now, some of that is like, why is that? And that's, I'm not sure. We'd have to like really dive into that. But I think that some people are just wired for that hunt, maybe more than others. I know myself, Danielle, I do exactly what you're talking about, because like I was raised in a place where delivering value, it was all a value exchange. And if you did something right, that's what was supposed to happen, because that's what's supposed to happen. If something was wrong, then there's something wrong with you. And I learned to seek validation through achievement. And in my adult, like, it's sad that that little boy in there still does this as like a grown ass man, like, this is like one of the conversations I even had with some friends was like, hey, just so you know, you could literally lose like all your stuff, like your things and your notoriety or your success in some sense, and like you'd still be our homie. Like, we don't care about any of that. And when I hear someone say that, logically I'm like, well, yeah, that's what a good friend is. But I'll be honest, it doesn't register. Like, there's something in the subconscious that's like, that's fucking stupid. And I mean that. And I dug into that recently, and I'll tell you why it's stupid, or why it feels stupid. It's because when something like that gets said to me, it sort of hurts, because you realize that that's how it should be. That's how you should think about these things. And I don't. So that's sad. The second thing is, it's that. So I have to accept the fact that I'm worthy of unconditional sort of love or support, or I have to accept that my whole worldview is broken. And that becomes very painful. When you take someone's worldview and it shatters, we call that burning off the dead wood in some sense. It stings. It's like a fire on your entire body. So that's why most people push that away, because they're like, no, fuck that. That ain't reality. My reality is this, and you get in your pride and, you want to stand there instead of accepting like, hey, there's something massively broken in this compass. Because like, do you believe what they're telling you? Yes. Do they act as if what they're telling you is true? Yes. Well, then why did it make you mad to even hear it? Well, that's why, right? So that's something that like I'm working through right now. And I didn't realize how much this snake was popping up in like a million little areas of my life, where I'm always trying to do something to provide value in some way or achievement so that I feel like I can get love.
Mm-hmm.
Because my trauma is that the love goes away, that I become non-valuable, and that the love gets taken away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm like always seeking. And that's the next part of my journey. That's probably going to take me from 32 to 35. And I'm kind of just like, I just started doing some journaling on it, getting my thoughts sorted, because I know that this is a battle that I've been probably avoiding for a good while, that I have to undertake, because whatever I discover and whoever I become through that is what is actually going to move me towards the things that I desire.
Mm-hmm.
That's like part of the game. Like when we've all played like Super Mario. Well, you don't get to fight Bowser until you fight like all the other people, right? You have to go through the levels and die like 300 times and get super annoyed, throw the computer and throw the controller. But that's a very good analogy for it, because that's the same thing. You just have to keep practicing these levels until you pass them. And then you sort of get a new fun reward, or more gold, or more coins, or more power as you progress through the levels.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I did too.
I always feel like I leave our podcasts, like with you specifically, just with so much more self-work to do. I'm like,
it's exciting.
Damn.
It's so freaking exciting.
It's enlightening.
How freaking cool you get to work on yourself more.
Exactly.
Though.
Like it helps spark these new ways that I can think about tackling some of my own like personal issues.
Yeah, me too. It helps me a lot, and it was good timing for us to dive into this. I hope we provided a lot of value for some of the listeners. And as always, I'd be more than happy to do it again. So
I would love it.
We'll have you back.
Yes, we definitely. I think these Q&As, I mean,
I love
they're
it.
fun.
I think they provide a lot of value, and they're good for us. So we'll definitely do another one.
Thank you so much.
Sounds really great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it looks like we're running out of time. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in here. Thank you guys for coming back to our podcast. If you could like, subscribe, drop questions, all of that. And we will see you again soon.
Love you.
Bye. I hope y'all really enjoyed the podcast today, leaving it feeling more relentless than ever. But we have a few things that we would love to ask of you, so I'm going to give this over to Noa.
Thank you guys so much for listening. If you could, I know that this is your new favorite podcast. Please leave a 5-star rating and review. Leave any comments and questions below. And make sure that you're sharing across social media so that all of your friends get to listen to the greatest podcast on earth.
And if you have any questions about any topics that we talk about or anything at all, fitness, competing related, anything, we'll hit you back up, Instagram or in the podcast under, if the comment box is there, then we will definitely answer your questions and help you out as best as we can.
Absolutely. So leave those 5-star reviews. Let us know, and we'll talk to y'all again soon.
Have a relentless day.
Bye.